thank you for joining us. My name is Larissa Greene. I'm with Advanta IRA. And in just a minute, we're going to talk with Marcella Silva. She's going to tell us all about land banking and why dirt is gold. So it's going to be a really great webinar. We are going to take questions during the webinar, but we're going to hold the questions until the end. So if you have something that pops up while Marcella is telling us about how to land bank, we're going to hold those questions. Go ahead and type them into the question box and we'll get them answered. I also want to mention that in the right-hand navigation where you see the question box, you're also going to see handouts. I uploaded the slides as a PDF to share, so you're welcome to download that. The file is a little large, so just be aware of that. It might take you a few seconds to get that download, but you can certainly download it there. Again, my name is Larissa Greene. I'm with Advanta IRA, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Advanta and why land banking is a topic that we're interested in. So here's my contact information here. If you have questions about IRAs, you're welcome to reach out to me. You can also scan the QR code to learn more about me and what I do for Advanta. We do presentations all the time, usually a couple a week. And so if you're interested in learning more about the different asset classes and the rules as they pertain to those investments, you can certainly email me and I will make sure to get that information over to you. Just be aware that Advanta IRA does not provide any legal investment or tax advice at all. We're simply here to provide a service where we handle record keeping for your account and the different investments that you want to make. But if you have any questions about investments, we'll leave that to you to work with your attorney or accountant or financial advisor. And this is not an endorsement or advice for any type of product. We have been in business over 20 years. I think it's 23 years now, and we have over $3.6 billion in assets under administration at this point. We have 2 offices. We're in the Clearwater area of Florida and also Atlanta, Georgia. And every individual that has an account with us receives a client account manager, an individual who is with them for the life of their account and assists them with any questions that they might have regarding the account. So that dedicated account manager is going to help them make investments, receive income on their account, answer questions about annual contributions, and all the different aspects that go along with self-directed IRAs. So that's a little bit about our company. But you may be asking, if you're new to our webinars, what is a self-directed IRA? And just very simply, it gives account holders the opportunity to have control over their funds and make investments that they choose outside of the market. So it's an opportunity to truly diversify your retirement account and sometimes invest in what you know best. So if you know private investments better than the stock market, that's your opportunity to help your retirement account grow in asset classes that you know and understand. You may have not heard of self-directed IRAs just very simply because there's not a lot of companies out there like Advanta IRA that are willing to hold assets outside of the market. Brokerage firms consider them hard to value. They're not sure how to do the administration. And so we're filling the gap in the industry to assist with those accounts. And really, truly, less than 4% of retirement accounts are truly self-directed. And what we mean by that, again, our definition is going to be a lot different than a brokerage firm's definition, but we're talking about investments outside of the market. Why do people choose to self-direct? Very simply, it's a new source of capital. They did not know, typically, that they have access to these funds to make investments outside of the market. And so it gives you the opportunity to say, well, I really like to make this investment, but personally, I don't have anything liquid at this point to make that investment. So how can I do it? And you can look to your retirement account to make those investments that you choose. Another reason is just simply stock market fatigue. If you're tired of being on that roller coaster, that the stock market represents, then you have the opportunity to make investments that you feel make more sense for you. And then, of course, tax benefits. Having returns grow tax deferred or tax free. That's something that we can all understand. And so there's opportunity there in a self-directed IRA. And before I bring Marcella on, I just want to give you an idea of the asset classes that we see in a self-directed IRA. And the reason that, I'm saying I'm giving you an idea of that is because the IRS actually doesn't say, here is what you can invest in, but instead they say what you can't invest in. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have webinars where we talk about prohibited transactions and things to be aware of as far as what you can invest in and who you can transact with. But just to give you an idea, and I like to say the sky is just about the limit for a self-directed IRA. We have a lot of people invest in real estate. As a matter of fact, if you Google real estate IRA, you're going to see, that is a term that is used in our industry a lot because we're referring to one of the more common asset classes in these types of accounts. So you can hold single family homes for long-term and short-term rentals, rehab projects, you can invest in condos, mobile homes and mobile home parks, limited partnerships, real estate syndications. And again, the list goes on and on for real estate, but also we see a lot of paper assets. So investing in limited partnerships, that's something I would consider, a paper asset, and it does not have to be linked to real estate. It could be a limited partnership, for example, that's investing in businesses. You see them for things like technology and healthcare facilities and things like that. And so there's a lot of that, but it could also be a private mortgage, tax liens and deeds, unsecured notes, debenture notes, option contracts. And we've even seen things like joint ventures and accounts receivable. Alternative assets to, the ones we kind of covered already are sometimes a little more unique, but not always. Investing into LLCs, maybe to create some sort of joint venture or partnership, but also into small businesses, things like angel investing and crowdfunding. We do have people invested into things like farm animals, movie projects, precious metals, and the list goes on. So that really gives you an idea. And as you can see, when I say the sky is just about the limit, you could really come up with an investment idea or strategy for your account, and it's likely something you could do within your retirement account. Again, just keeping in mind that there are rules for prohibited transactions and disqualified persons, and if you'd like to learn more, just send me an email and I'll make sure to get you a recording for a webinar where we have covered those rules. So now, I just want to tell you a little bit about the plans that can be self-directed, and then we will bring Marcella on. So I think everybody is pretty familiar with traditional IRAs. Those are the most common accounts that we see. But of course, Roth IRAs or something inherited. We also can help you with savings accounts. So savings accounts that can be self-directed are health savings accounts and education savings accounts, because the rules for self-directing those accounts are going to be exactly the same. So you can definitely make alternative investments using those accounts. And then of course, plans for small businesses, solo 401ks, SEP IRAs and simple IRAs. And these plans allow you to make a larger contribution on an annual basis, possibly get a deduction for yourself and for your business. But also now they give you the opportunity to make contributions that are going to grow tax-free. So you have a lot of options when you're structuring your plan. So now we're going to talk to Marcella. She's going to tell us all about how dirt is gold. Thank you so much for joining us today, Marcella.
Thank you so much for having me, Larissa and Advanta. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm super excited to be here and share all about something called land banking. So as you can see, my information is on the screen. If you want to take that down, I became a land banker. That's how I fell in love with this opportunity myself. Back in 2007, I used to work for the government, and I worked there for about 10 years at a prestigious national laboratory as a software engineer. And in 2007, that laboratory went through a major transition. And as a result of that transition, they completely changed all of their benefits, including their 401k. So I had an opportunity at that time. Do I take my old 401k funds and roll it into the new 401k program that they were putting together, or do I do something else with it? And along that road, I learned all about self-directed IRAs, which I had no clue about. So that was phenomenal, and I love self-directed IRAs. So I took my old 401k, rolled it into a self-directed IRA, and started looking for opportunities to invest in. I didn't want to keep it in the old 401k because, To be quite honest, I remember sitting at my kitchen table at that time, looking at my statement, thinking to myself, the only way this goes up is when I put money into it. It was ridiculous. I knew I was never going to be able to retire at that rate. And I mean, when do you ever see or hear about people creating wealth with their 401k? Not a self-directed IRA, just the regular 401k. It just doesn't happen. So I decided I wanted to move those funds into a real tangible asset that would actually go up in value. That started me on my journey looking into real estate investments. I went to a lot of seminars, read books, even got my real estate license. Not that I planned on selling real estate or anything, it was just all for my own education. And along the way, I learned about something called land banking. And I knew that it was the perfect opportunity for me. I wasn't interested in the traditional types of real estate like rentals and such. I didn't have the time, patience, or resources for tenants, toilets, and termites. Not to say that that's wrong or that that's bad. There's a place for everything. It just wasn't for me at that time. I wanted a way to make money while I sleep without having to put time or effort into my investments. And that's what led me to land banking. So what is land banking? It is the practice of buying affordable, pre-developed land located in the path of growth. Many of you, I'm sure all of you, have seen this happen before your eyes during your lifetime. You might want to consider the area where you grew up. Chances are it looks a lot different today than it did when you were a kid, meaning there's a lot more development there that wasn't there before. Imagine being able to own key pieces of land that are now maybe your favorite commercial centers or something like that. So here's a image of what land banking is. This is actually a backdated Google Earth image of the San Francisco Bay Area, specifically a town called Milpitas in the Bay Area. It's about 20 miles southeast of San Francisco. So when I say a pre-developed area, that means existing developments, as you can see here on the screen, existing infrastructure, there's roads, but there's still a lot of land available to be developed. That's when we want to invest in it. We also need it to be a high growth area, which is based off of economic trends, economics. There's a lot of that goes into it. I'm not going to get into all of that right now. So the land, well, it's affordable. In this particular picture, roughly 1,000 to 50,000 per acre, depending on zoning and location. I actually know somebody who bought 10 acres of land in this picture for $10,000. There is now a super target sitting on top of that land, and that one parcel of land created generational wealth for them. That's what the power of land can do. If you consider it, land is the original investment on earth. It is the cornerstone of the wealthy. But unfortunately, most people don't know how to invest in it correctly. And that's where we come in. So buying it when it looks like this, click the button, you can see just 7 years later, the amount of development and growth that's come in. So what do you think happened to the value of the land? Here's a little clue for you guys. They're not making any more land. And it is an asset that is needed for literally everything and by everyone. And as there's less and less of it available, the value continues to rise. Simple economics. $500,000 to $1 million per acre in this picture. And today you're looking at 2 to 7 million per acre, if you can even find an acre of land in this area, which let me tell you, you can't. No more land left. So that's an example of what land banking is. Here's another example. And this is a little snapshot into how we go about doing this. So this is Rancho Cucamonga in Southern California. If you know ahead of time that the city, county is going to be spending millions of dollars on a new on and off ramp, for example, new infrastructure. They're not doing that for no reason. They're doing that because they're planning for the future growth of an area. So if you know that ahead of time and pick up some quality land, like in this picture, you don't have to own all of it. You just need a piece of it. Developers cannot develop unless they have your property, and that is a very powerful position to be in. So that's an example of what land banking is. And General Douglas MacArthur described it best when he said, all a person has to do to become rich in America is find out where people are going, get there first, buy land while it's affordable, and then wait. It's one of those assets that should be a part of every portfolio. It will always be there for you. It will never disappear. It cannot be hacked. It won't be burnt down. It's a real asset that continues to rise in value over time. You can't even depreciate it. IRS, it's a non-depreciable asset according to the IRS. Why? Because again, it's finite and it continues to increase in value over time. So America's first multimillionaire, John Jacob Astor, he actually created his wealth by doing exactly what I'm talking about. He did that in New York. He found out where the municipalities was putting in infrastructure, where they were putting in utilities, got ahead of that, bought the land, and just held on to it until they needed it. Very powerful position to be in. So here's an example of one of my parcels of land. I personally own 13 pieces, controlling over 4.5 million square feet of land in the most high growth areas, specifically in California. So this property I bought in 2014 for $92,000. There it is. You can see all of the land available. So it's exactly what I'm talking about, the pre-developed area. We're not buying land out in the middle of nowhere where nothing is happening. And then now that property is worth well over $2 million. From here to here. So understanding economics, growth patterns, cities, there's a lot that goes into doing this correctly. We will touch on that today. Why people invest in land, legacy, financial independence. It's a great hedge against other markets. And of course, inflation is a big issue nowadays. By the way, land has always beat inflation far more than things like gold actually has. So we're going to finish covering today who is the company that I represent, where and why we invest, and then how to invest if you're interested in working with us. Here's a picture of my Velur family. These are the owners of the company. This gentleman in particular, Lubor. This is myself and my husband. This is a team of my investors. We're all in Tahiti together. This is actually my bonus son. At 19, he bought his first property with us. I'm so proud of him. So we are land experts. We have been in the business since 1979. So you might just be hearing about this for the first time, but again, this is something that has been done throughout history. We've been doing it for 46 years, and our core competency and why people work with us is because of the due diligence that we do on both a macro and microeconomic level, and then with the land itself, making sure that it's quality developable land. Land is very risky. If you don't know what you're doing, I would advise be careful if you're acquiring land on your own. And many real estate agents are not familiar with land, not to put them down. It's just that they focus typically on the structures on top of the land. So you want to work with an expert when investing in land. We have worked with actually now close to 40,000 investors, have bought and sold hundreds of thousands of acres of land at this point. We are the largest influencers of land in the areas where we invest. There is not a single development that comes in without us knowing about it, because we have investors who own land literally all over these specific areas where we focus on. And we are 100% represented by my customers. So like I said, I myself am an investor. I invested myself back in 2008. Luckily, before the stock market crashed, I took my money out of that craziness and put it into my very first property, which more than doubled in the first year. And Velur is my real estate broker. They are highly regulated by the California Department of Real Estate, and I have my California real estate license. So to talk a little bit about the due diligence that all of our land goes through. Out of 30 properties we look at any one time, we purchase about one. So we're very strict with the criteria that every property must adhere to. Like I said earlier, land is risky if you don't know what you're doing. So we want to make sure that all of our properties fall within our 16, 3, and 10 method of comprehensive analysis. First is 16 points of comprehensive analysis, making sure it's quality, developable, marketable land. There's no issues with it. For example, if there's a red-legged toad on your land, that little guy has more rights than we do because it's an endangered species and you wouldn't be able to develop the land. Or you wouldn't want some weird easement running through the middle of the land preventing it from being developable, or toxic waste spill on the land. It has to be developable land. And we take all of our properties through 16 different layers of maps to make sure that it is quality developable land to remove the risks that are typically associated with land. The biggest risk in land is not what you see. You might go out and drive down the road and say, oh, this looks like a high growth area. There's been a lot of development happening here. Sure, that's great. But then what's happening with each individual parcel of land themselves? Is it developable? There's a lot that goes into this. You want to watch out for the hidden landmines that are associated with land. At Velur, we take care of all of that. We remove any risks that are associated with the land. Now, am I saying that there's no risk when you buy land with us? No. The biggest risk, and the risk that we cannot control, and really it's with any investment, is you, the investor. And this comes from Benjamin Graham, who happened to be the professor of Warren Buffett himself. An investor's chief problem and his worst enemy is likely to be himself. In the end, how your investments behave is much less important than how you behave. So what does that mean when it comes to land banking? Banking is a long-term investment. Long-term being 7 to 10 years. It could take longer. It could be much shorter. We don't have the crystal ball to say when that development is going to need your land. However, when you buy it correctly in the right areas, the value of it continues to rise over time. So you want to be a patient investor using patient funds. That's why using an Advanta IRA is a great opportunity for investors. Probably 80% of my investors use IRAs to invest in land. And it's easy. There's no maintenance on it. You don't have to fix anything up. It's really probably the easiest real estate investment asset you could buy, and one of the most lucrative. So we're also looking at the 3-mile ring of development. The Urban Land Institute has done studies, and they have found as new development comes into an area, it causes the surrounding value of land within a 3-mile radius to increase in value. So the numbers I'm going to give you are coming from the Urban Land Institute, and from what we have seen, these are very conservative numbers. So let's say you own this property here in the middle, and a new development comes in 3 miles away, which, by the way, can cost millions, even billions of dollars, depending on the development. It's a lot of money, time, and risk that developers get into. Me, I'm a lazy landowner. I'm busy living my life while my land is working for me. Like I mentioned, I have 13 properties. I have not even seen all of them, and I don't care because it's just dirt and the research has already been done on them. So a new development comes in 3 miles away. That's increasing the value of my land by 10% for every new development in a 3-mile radius. Within a 2-mile radius, that's a 20% appreciation, and within a 1-mile radius, that's a 30% appreciation per development. And again, this is coming from the Urban Land Institute. So as I'm holding my land, the value of it continues to rise as new developments come in. That's why we want to be in those high growth, pre-developed areas. So understanding economics is key. We want flat developable land, obviously not on the side of a hill or a mountain, population projections and government studies, water supply, infrastructure, accessibility by freeway, air, and rail in the areas. Adequate utilities have to be in place. And number 7 is very important, commercial, residential, and industrial developments. We are not investing in what you would consider a quote unquote bedroom community where it's mostly just housing. We want industry moving into these areas because industry causes development on all different levels to come in. Population growth is caused by new industry and new employment. Proximity to a metro city, government and private related services. Number 10 is also super important, a pro-business city government, a city government that actually wants to grow and that doesn't hinder development. I personally live in an area where there's several cities that are not pro-business cities. They make it very difficult for developments to come in. So being aware of all of these indicators to find those high growth areas. This is kind of like a high level view of what we're looking at. And then for us, our guarantees to those that work with us, number 1, we provide you with the grant deed, which is the highest possible ownership recorded with the county recorder's office. So you want to own that land. You want to be in full control of that land, and you also want to have policy of title insurance with that land. I know people who have bought land, not through us, but on their own, and we're not even able to get title insurance on their property. There's a lot of different scenarios and issues that can come up for folks regarding the title of the property. And of course, people who purchase through us, we ensure that you get title insurance, which of course is the legal transfer and marketable title to the property. And then our 3 points of service to our investors. Number 1, providing you with the quality property, which has gone through that due diligence process. After you purchase with us, we don't say, okay, goodbye, good luck, we hope you do well. We continually provide you with updates, letting you know what's happening in the area, economics, all kinds of different things that are going on, new developments happening, you name it. We're constantly updating our investors. So much is happening right now. It's like, it's almost hard to keep on top of it all. And people can tune in as much as they want, or they can just not. And here's the thing about land, it never calls you on the phone, which is wonderful. And at the same time, you know, you really want to stay tuned in to know what's happening in the areas where your investments are as we watch the values continue to increase. Like I said, as new developments come in, it increases the values. And then this is what we call arbitrage, when you own the land that a developer needs. We help our investors go through the negotiations with the developer to get the highest and best price for our properties. One of my investors, we just helped them. She got a 11x return in 5 years. Just she's about to close escrow actually on her property. It was phenomenal. So owning this property, let's say we own this little square right here, a developer comes along and needs all of this land. That's a powerful position to be in. And here's the thing. The developer can't just run off to Costco and buy another piece of land. There's only so much of it available in the specific areas with the specific zonings. And again, you as the landowner are in a powerful position to negotiate to get the highest and best price. We provide all of these services. We help you to negotiate with the developers, everything completely free of charge. So like my investor who made an 11x return recently, she didn't pay a single dime to us for helping her through those negotiations.
So Marcella, you mentioned some of the due diligence that, individuals that want to invest in land should look at. And so is there an area that you would recommend that let's say you find an area that you feel is in the path of development, for example. But you mentioned some, sort of roadblocks with, municipalities and things like that. Is there a good way for them to, start their due diligence there? Should they go to the city? What would you recommend?
Yeah, you would really need to talk to the city planners and go to the cities, start looking at the different maps that you can get, the general plan maps. And, you know, even just there, that's the broader view, but then you have to look at the individual parcels, the parcel maps from the counties, and determine if this is something that can be developed, going back to the city planning to see what can be done. So there's a lot that goes into it to really get in there. You'll have to dig in deep with city planning and see what's allowed on that land.
Okay, got it. And you mentioned sometimes, cities aren't as willing to look forward to developing. And so, it'll be important for individuals that are looking at land in their area to understand sort of whether or not those cities want to look to the future.
Exactly. And just looking at the laws that they might have implemented around development. It's such a wide scope, but again, going back to the city planning and seeing what they allow or don't allow. And there's certain types of developments that they don't allow. Every city is going to be different, so I can't really be very specific there.
Okay, I think that's helpful. And then you also mentioned something that I think is interesting, and I know where I live, endangered species, I can think of a few that, when there's development happening, everybody is very aware that they have to look at that, something like that. Is that also something that, individual investors can look in their area and talk to the city about whether or not they're endangered species that they have to, be aware of before, as part of their due diligence process?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you want to look into that. The natural hazards disclosure report, and for us, there's specific maps that map out where endangered species are and areas that are protected.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, and you really got to be careful, because some people buy land based off of price, like, oh wow, there's this super cheap piece of land here. Well, you got to ask yourself, why is it so cheap, and what's happening there that may or may not allow development. I mean, there's another issue here in California where there's a lot of public land that, if you look at a map, it's kind of has this checkerboard effect where there's public and private land kind of checkerboarded with each other. And that goes back to the days of when they were building out the railroads. They gave the railroad workers land as an incentive for, doing the work. Well, little did the workers know that this was land that was basically checkerboarded in with public land, and basically it's undevelopable. So you wouldn't be able to run infrastructure to these areas or develop it out. There's a lot of different scenarios when it comes to land and doing it correctly, and things to be aware of. So getting the maps, and it's interesting because we have maps that not even the cities or counties have access to. They actually come to us to see our maps, and that's a whole other long story about how we got access to those maps, but that's part of the secret sauce that we have. But yeah, maps are big.
Got it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's talk about where we invest specifically. We only invest in California. Why? Economy. It is the fourth largest economy in the world. It is just a state, but it is, compared to nations, the fourth largest. So having a strong economy is very important. Land scarcity. We can be in a strong economy, but if there's a whole bunch of land, then you're not going to get the returns that you're looking for. So limited land. And this is the reason why California real estate is so expensive, traditional real estate being houses and buildings. According to the Lincoln Land Institute, on average, about 63% of the value of a home in California is the dirt itself. That's why we see people paying literally $2 million for a burnt down house, not because of the structure, but because of the land. And so scarcity amount of land, California is a massive state, obviously. However, there's very little developable land left. So in California, this was a study done by UC Berkeley 26 years ago. There's 100 million acres total in California. You subtract out all of the land that cannot be developed for various different reasons, there is only 2% left to be developed, 2% of land left to be developed. So very limited land left, and we happen to be investing in the most affordable, kind of last remaining developable land in specific areas in Southern California. But here's some before and after pictures for you guys. This actually is just over the hill from where I live, what it used to look like, and now completely covered in development. For those of you familiar with California, you know the growth that's happened here. Walnut Creek, when there was actual walnut groves, and what it looks like today is very, very expensive real estate there, before and after. No more land left. So obviously you want to get in at the right time so you're not waiting forever. And that's our goal in really determining the areas that are growing the fastest in the short amount of time. So looking at the World Economic Forum and their specific high growth sectors, there is a direct correlation between high growth sectors and land consumption in the high growth areas where we're looking at. So tech roles, specifically around artificial intelligence, robotics, that type of thing, big data specialists, green energy, renewable energy, and e-commerce and logistics. We all love our Amazon, and that's all of those things are consuming a tremendous amount of land, actually causing the largest land rush in history, which we will talk about. So we focus within a 60-mile radius of downtown LA. A lot of population there. By the way, LA is the most populated county in America, so huge population, limited land. It's kind of the perfect ingredients for the right land banking opportunity. Yes, there are land investing. You can invest all over the place, but that does not mean you are land banking. Land banking, you want to be very specific and all the things we've already talked about so far. So we are investing in some of the last remaining developable land in LA County, which is the 19th largest economy in the world. Also, multiple economic drivers, economic trends need to be causing the area to grow, not just population growth, not just housing. We want multiple economic trends. That way, if any one thing falls off, or there's a pandemic, or there's an economic downturn, development is still happening. So this area we have targeted for many years. Specifically, I'm going to just talk about a few of them. Industrial is important. So we mentioned e-commerce and logistics earlier. The Port of LA and Port of Long Beach are the busiest ports in the entire United States. So if you're a land banking, you want to be within 60 miles of a deep water port. Growth, logistics are happening here, goods coming in and out of Asia. I mean, this is the gateway to the Pacific, and they are the busiest they have ever been. Growth continues to happen at an astounding rate at these ports. Well, when these goods come in, they don't just stay at the ports. They have to go to massive distribution centers, fulfillment centers, and then move on out from there. So over 40% of all goods coming into the United States is coming through these ports. So we're a consumer nation. Everybody loves to buy stuff. Everybody loves to buy stuff online, on Amazon. We've been watching the Amazon effect kind of roll out for about a decade now. It's been quite interesting, and COVID sped that up, right? Everybody got used to being able to buy stuff online. As a matter of fact, the #1 car on my street every single day is Amazon. All day, every day, Amazon delivering. They make it very easy for us to shop. Well, Amazon wants to have their fulfillment centers within a 100 to 200 mile radius of the major metro markets. So getting into the right industrial land needed for these developments. And just so you're aware, for every $1 billion in online sales, you need 1.25 million square feet of warehouse space. 1.25 million square feet is about the size of 5 Costco's, just to give you an idea of how big these things are. They are absolutely massive. And being nearby these ports and having the right industrial land, this is what happens. We showed you the picture before and after. That is a less than 10-year period of what happened, from $1 per square foot to $30 per square foot and more. And then right now, the largest land rush in history is happening here in California, and it has to do with energy. We all use energy every single day, and our energy needs are growing at a very rapid pace right now. The greatest shift of wealth in the history of the world has been unfolding, especially here in California, since 2005. This is not new. This is something they've been pushing forward for quite some time, and there are mandates that are in place that are moving us to a greener and cleaner future and a state of energy independence. So what's happening with this wealth shift is the shift away from fossil fuels to green energy. And the main reason why this has really started happening globally, not just here in California, but across the globe, and it's being mandated by individual states, governments, corporations, which is a huge one, is the fact that green energy is now cheaper than fossil fuels. Specifically, solar energy is the cheapest form of electricity in history, according to the International Energy Agency, and that was back in 2019, 2020. So we're starting to see, all of these oil companies shifting their portfolios towards green energy. As an example, Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates, you might be familiar with them, they created their wealth with oil. Well, we are seeing them investing billions of dollars in massive alternative energy solar projects in the area where we're investing. You have to ask yourself, why is that happening? Same thing with Duke Energy. They created their wealth with oil, and they're investing in massive solar projects. So a lot of private money to the tune of over $100 billion has already been invested in infrastructure and projects where we're investing. I'll show you guys some pictures. But this is happening very, very fast. So as a comparison, let's go back to horse and buggy days. This is Fifth Avenue in New York in 1900. All horse and buggies, okay? Imagine living in that time, being pulled around by horses. Well, the transition from horse and buggies to cars was rather quick, especially considering this is the 1900s when things were a lot slower. You got to consider there were no such thing as gas stations back in those days. And to implement all of that, how long that must have took, but still at the same time, it happened fairly quickly considering the time we're looking at. Well, the transition now that's happening from gas-powered cars to electric vehicles is even faster. And I love what Rockefeller said here. The major fortunes in America have been made in land. So he was the oil magnate. Well, you can't get oil without the land. Now we have the opportunity to own the new age oil well, but instead of oil, it is for massive utility scale projects. So California is rapidly moving towards an electric vehicle future. Not just California, but individual cities are also moving to having all electric vehicles in their cities. And just to see how rapid this is being taken up, in 2020, 1 in 25 cars sold was electric. That's according to the International Energy Agency, and this is globally. And according to Cox Automotive, 1 in 4 cars sold in 2025 will be electrified. So you have to consider all of the different automakers out there, and they have been retooling their factories for years now to start making electric vehicles at a faster rate. As a matter of fact, I did a search. There are over 230, I believe, electric car manufacturers just in America. And in California specifically, there are now 50% more electric vehicle chargers than there are gas nozzles. So they had a goal of having electric vehicle chargers within every 50 miles here in California. Where is all of that electricity coming from? Consider that. So just to give you an idea of how much energy an electric vehicle uses, which by the way, it uses a lot less than gas-powered cars. One Nissan Leaf, 2017 Nissan Leaf, little car, you're probably honking him off of the freeway because they're going so slow, takes about the same amount of energy as one home. A Tesla car, 60 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts, so you're talking 2 to 3 times the amount of energy as a single home. That's a lot of energy that is being consumed. And so as there's more and more electric vehicles, we need the energy to be able to power them. And electric vehicles, yes, it sounds like they're using a lot of energy, but again, they are much more efficient and actually use a lot less energy than gas-powered vehicles. And this was a study done by Yale. And then there's another type of vehicle out there that is quickly coming onto the roads, and that is the commercial vehicles, semis, light, heavy, medium-duty trucks. They require a lot of energy. And we have already been implementing the West Coast Electric Highway, and they have been implementing the chargers all the way out to Texas from Southern California. And they found that it's 50 to 80% cheaper over the lifetime of these trucks for these trucking companies. So major trucking companies like Maersk, Volvo are all now coming out with some of these electric vehicles. And I've already started, so FedEx, Amazon, Walmart, Frito-Lay, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all of these companies, like I mentioned before, corporate mandates, they're all going green. Well, in doing that, they are also transitioning to green vehicles. So here, that's an actual picture of one of the massive solar projects that is out in the areas where we're investing. That's why we're calling it the New Age oil well. Simply follow the money. Trillions of dollars has already been invested, and now there's something even bigger, or I don't want to say bigger than electric vehicles, but potentially just as big, is AI. We all love AI. People love it, things like cryptocurrency. Well, none of that is possible without electricity. And AI is growing at an astounding rate, and it uses so much energy. It is mind-blowing. That's my mind blowing up there on the screen. It is estimated that it costs 30 times more energy to do an AI search rather than just doing a simple Google search. So consider all of these massive data centers that are being built right now for AI. Yes, number one, they need a lot of land, but even bigger is the amount of land that's going to be needed to power these things. It is estimated that AI will gobble up more power here in the United States than all of the households combined by the year 2030. So all of the energy needed to power homes, that's how much energy will be needed just to power AI by 2030. That's huge. Here's a graph showing the continual growth of the energy needs. So from January 2023 to November 2024, this is the amount of energy consumed by AI data centers in less than 2 years. That's equivalent amount of energy to 20 million homes. That's like 100, I want to say it was 130% of all homes in California in less than 2 years. So let that sink in, how much energy that is. And how are we going to meet those needs? They are calling this the next industrial revolution, the era of electrification intelligence. So these companies, Meta, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, right? These are the guys putting out these huge data centers and AI. Well, they have individually committed to going green. So what does that mean? All of their energy powering all of these things need to be green. And solar has been the #1 form of alternative energy that's been going in because it's simple, it's easy to scale, it's cost effective, and it needs a lot of land, a tremendous amount of land. And so for us, our investors have been able to get huge equity gains. They've also been doing long-term land leases. I've seen land leases 35 up to 45 years for these massive utility scale solar projects. And they're getting their original investments back within the first 1 to 3 years. Yes, 1 to 3 years. That means some people are getting 100% or more return every single year on this. So a lot of energy is going to be needed just to power AI and electric vehicles. And right now, more than $1 billion per day is being spent on solar energy deployment, according to the International Energy Agency. More money is being put into solar energy projects than any other form of energy generation technology out there. This is globally. China, for example, they are beating everyone with the most amount of green energy, and they potentially will win the AI race because of how much energy they're putting in. So clean tech investments are expected to hit $670 billion in 2025, with solar leading the charge by leaps and bounds. So welcome to the opportunity of energy real estate. And already green energy has beat out coal. That was as of March, as for more generation technology. Here in California, green energy is we are running at about 60 to 65% green energy. I just saw that yesterday. And the clean energy leader has been California all the way dating back to 2002 is when they started implementing rules for us to go 100% green. Senate Bill 100 says by the year 2045, 100% of California's energy must come from alternative energy sources. And the needle on that keeps moving up as AI comes in, as more electric vehicles come in. So it's a race to get this done. They want to be at 90% by the year 2035. So there are mandates on the books moving us to a greener and cleaner future. And we happen to be investing in the #1 location for that. This is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory map. The darker the red, the more intense the sun. So if you are a solar energy company like Warren Buffett has a 9 square mile project out there, you want to be where the best sun is. And that happens to be right here. And it has to be developable land as well. So very critical piece to that. And you need to have the necessary infrastructure there. So already over 7 billion, actually, no, sorry, 7, 8, 10, $11 billion has already been invested in these areas on high tension power lines infrastructure. So some of you guys might say, oh, I have land, I want to put solar on it. Is it right for solar development? Is there infrastructure there, massive high tension power lines implemented to be able to move that energy into the grid? So here's some actual pictures. By the way, these white boxes, battery energy storage systems, those guys pay a pretty penny for land, let me tell you. So here, this is billions of dollars in infrastructure in the area where we're investing. You can see wind projects in the background there. This is Warren Buffett's recent project. Again, batteries, this is growing at a very rapid pace. I think that recently $100 million just recently committed to implementing batteries here in America. So the solar energy land rush is upon us in a big way, ladies and gentlemen, which offers the opportunity for energy real estate, like Rockefeller said. And I'm almost done here. Here's an example of one of my parcels of land. I bought a 20-acre parcel back in 2023 for $160,000. And a couple months later, this 20-acre parcel was purchased by a battery energy storage system for $1.8 million. Land is limited. It is being consolidated at the fastest rate in history. Some of these projects are upwards of 13 square miles large. They are massive. And I'm trying to advance. We're almost done. So I'm going to fast forward here. This is the #1 location. This is where over $100 billion has already been invested in infrastructure and solar projects. And it's 2,200 square miles large. This study that I actually bypassed here says we need about 6,280 square miles of land, an area bigger than the state of Connecticut, and likely more land than California has available. This is the low-hanging fruit for developers. These massive utility scale projects are the cheapest way for them to create energy. Here's another example of a map. So I showed you where the most intense sun is. And like all of this area out here was covered in intense sun. Notice that checkerboard effect. I mentioned that earlier as well, right? Where you have private land intermingled with public land. Well, all of this land is protected land, federal government land. It's not developable. It's also not flat. And you have things like Death Valley out there. So that's not what you want. We need that developable land. We want that infrastructure. You can see flat land, massive solar projects. Over 200 square miles of land has already been consumed so far, and bringing California to at a 60% renewable energy level so far. And I'm going to fast forward through these pictures here. I think you guys get the gist of what's happening out there. This is a 13 square mile solar project, which is just going to be powering Amazon and their artificial intelligence. So welcome to the greatest land rush in history. It's unstoppable at this point. It's not a matter of if, it is just a matter of how soon. And simply because, again, it's the cheapest form of electricity. So when you own the asset that everyone and everything needs, which is land, and it's being used to create the resource we all use every day, which is energy, it's a wonderful opportunity for investors. So if you're looking to diversify into land and to this finite asset that continues to go up in value, then you might want to consider us, or go out there, do your own due diligence, be careful, talk to the right people, look at the right maps. There's a lot that goes into it. You can reach out to me directly if you want to discuss further about possibly getting a property for yourself, or if you have any questions, please let me know. With that, I think I'm definitely over time. Thank you so much, Larissa, for having me here today. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I do want to give everybody just a quick minute to type any questions into the box there that we might address. One question that popped up was when you're talking about land, you mentioned a lot about, having that land ready for, in the path of progress, development, looking at something that will be desirable in the future in those areas. Just to help us understand a little bit, Marcella, maybe you could tell us, and I might be using the wrong language here, but to understand, is it considered raw land that investors are looking for, or is it already entitled?
Raw land.
Raw land. Okay, understood. So then, and that's then going to be important for when investors are doing their due diligence, so that they understand that even though it's raw, it's something that can be developed in the future, and that will be important for something where individuals are doing their due diligence, looking at maps and making sure that in the future that could be developed. So that would be something they could go to the county and look at this county and city maps and understand. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. And like entitled land, that's a whole different, you know, there's multiple different stages to land. We are at the very earliest stage where it's the cheapest, because entitling land can be very expensive. And entitlers are buying the land from us.
Okay, got it. So they're really doing the work. So when you're land banking, when you're making your investments, you're counting on that path of progress so that really you're not having to do any of the work. You're just holding it until someone comes along that's ready to do that entitlement work.
Exactly. You're just simply the landowner. We want to make it as easy and simple as possible. No efforting.
Got it. Okay. And you know, another question that popped up is what kind of expenses do individuals making land investments, what should they sort of, you know, look at, you know, part of their due diligence process, what expenses will that land have as they hold it?
Well, with us and for our investors, it's property taxes, which in California are very low because of Proposition 13, which keeps the property taxes at no more than 1.3%. And with raw land, the counties typically assess it very low because there's no buildings on it. So it keeps those property taxes very low, less than that 1.3% typically on most land. Now, I can't speak to land outside of the land that we invest in. So you would want to talk to, you know, every state is probably different. Every county is probably different. So you want to look into what types of expensive might be associated with land there.
Okay. And when, you know, looking at raw land, I think your focus, and when you talk about due diligence, your focus is really for the path of progress. But can you speak to anything about buying land with mineral rights, or is that sort of out of the scope of what your due diligence includes?
Yeah, that's outside of the scope for us, because with land banking, the goal is that the top of the land is going to be used. So we're not getting into mineral rights or anything like that.
Okay, got it. Okay. So I don't see any other questions that popped up. So Marcella, I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking time today. Like I said, I think somebody mentioned that the handout was large and they had trouble downloading it. If you have any trouble downloading it, you'd like me to email it to you, I certainly can try. It's just a large handout. I don't know if it will come through on email. So please feel free to reach out to me. And Marcella, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Larissa. Thank you everyone for joining today, and best wishes to everyone.
Thank you.